Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambermont Weber, and we're very privileged today to have with us in the studio Kevin Annett, who's the Field Secretary for North America of the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, Alfred. It's been a while.
Right, and this is actually a very active time, and in some sense a worrisome update because, of course, we're located here in Canada, and as of several days ago, it seems that we had another false flag operation in Ottawa, and you very aptly named it Track B. And so, could you give us an update on this and what the ITCCS, what perspective it has on Track B?
Well, it's important to start there because the reality we're in, Alfred, is that it's like all over the planet the mask has slipped, and we're seeing the predatory and really psychotic nature of the system we're living under. And so this is part of the whole discussion today about how we need to transform ourselves from simply educating people, documenting crimes, and even adjudicating them, to actually stopping these crimes, taking down these criminals and institutions, and reclaiming the earth and the law for the people. And that's the general perspective guiding us more and more now. Canada, to begin there, the incident that happened where a soldier was shot and killed on Parliament Hill, clearly a false flag. It followed all the standard procedure when you're doing that kind of thing. And it's been followed by something that was announced this last week from a source within the Canadian government who is describing what they are terming Track B. It wasn't the term I made up, it's actually a term they're using, to describe basically the creation of a new system of government and police powers in Canada, which is roughly mirroring the Homeland Security Act in the United States, although because of the nature of the Canadian government, it's probably more lethal because you don't have the traditional checks and balances that you'd have in the American system, where at least, for example, the CIA director has to be approved by Congress. That isn't the case with CSIS. They operate completely autonomously from any kind of government accountability. But the reality is that this government source is describing how there's going to be a new system set up in Canada where habeas corpus will not be operating. There will be open-ended warrants where people can be held indefinitely. Now, the whole Ebola scare is adding to that because under so-called medical emergencies, the Charter of Rights can be suspended according to Canadian law. Medical emergencies, national crises, anything the government considers, like now, a national emergency. So that's happening as we speak. It's supposed to go into effect formally on November 1st, and you're going to see the usual arrests and everything. But the thing is, you won't be hearing about this in the news, of course, in the corporate or mainstream media. The people will be selectively detained and quarantined, as has already happened, under the whole Ebola thing. So this is part of this shift we're seeing, and why we have to respond even more aggressively, more clearly, to say to people, we cannot be intimidated. They are the criminals. Now is the time to stop these criminals in power from being sexual predators on our children, be involved in killing our children through these sacrificial cults and others. They do not have the right to operate anymore, and we are determined to stop them.
Now, the ITCCS indicated in a communique several days ago that there would be a statement around this time. Is that the case? Is there a statement coming forward? Or?
There is. It's scheduled to come out November 1st. Okay. The ITCCS leadership are all pretty much have gone underground at this point. They are not operating in a public way anymore. They are there being a whole number of things going on in Europe which have posed threats to the work of especially the top leadership of the ITCCS. I've been advised not to travel, not to use any kind of official ID to flag where I am or anything. This is something they're they're telling all of their organizers and leaders all over the world right now. So it's got to be serious. I don't know all the facts, but it's clearly related to this whole kind of global shift that's going on, as kind of described by the this other aspect we want to talk today, the new economic realignment happening in Asia.
Right, and you, yeah. So shifting to that, but just before we shift to that, we'll be talking about the Vatican Bank's role
Right.
in the new BRICS nations bank. But now, why is it, do you think, why is it that the ITCCS officials, the ITCCS being an international tribunal, why are they taking this posture of going underground? Or why are they the focus, or a particular focus, of this kind of backlash from the matrix powers? Is it because of the evidence and the verdicts that the ITCCS has produced? Is that why?
Generally speaking, but even more specifically, Alfred, it's because of the thing that we talked about last time, which has been on our ITCCS.org site for a while. The series of arrests, over 1,000 arrests that happened across Europe by European police, Interpol, and others, acting on information ITCCS and others provided to them, arresting child traffickers, liberating 30 children from Romania and Portugal who were in the process of being trafficked. We hit right at the source of a very lucrative industry, which is human trafficking. Also, by doing that, we targeted the link between Drangheta, the Catholic Church, and, for example, Drangheta provided the children and youth used in these child sacrificial rituals of the Ninth Circle. That was proven. But it goes beyond that, because Drangheta is also connected to intelligence agencies all over the world. For example, the RCMP here in Canada have a long relationship with the mafia. We know that here in Vancouver. This came out early in the Willie Picton trial. And this is actually one of the reasons I lost my radio program at Vancouver Co-op Radio. Very soon after we disclosed this publicly, my show was banned, as were other programmers, including yourself. We established that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were actually taking Aboriginal women they had abducted on the streets of Vancouver out to so-called Piggy's Palace for use in snuff films, and then they were ritually killed. The RCMP and the Hells Angels, which is one of the covers of the mafia, closely linked. Drangheta arranged the killing of that Ottawa policeman. That was in the news a little while ago. Our news service disclosed that. He was head of the human trafficking unit for the Ottawa Police. He had helped the ITCS group that went into Montreal to stop that sacrificial ritual that was going to occur on August 15th. He was killed at an order from Drangheta. Kill orders are out against ITCS leaders, and apparently myself as well, because of that disclosure and the fact that arrests are already being made and their network is being broken up. It's really affecting their money. And of course, you always follow the money in this, and you can see what's happening. Drangheta alone, in Holland alone, Drangheta bring in over 50 million euros a month in drug trafficking and human trafficking. Now that is being seriously affected, because when you're breaking up the human trafficking networks, you're also cutting into the drug network. I mean, it's all connected.
Yeah.
The bribery of public officials, all of that stuff is threatened by the work of the ITCCS. So yes, they're out to stop now, ITCCS, and that's affected all the work we do. And why we are coming out now and saying to people, we can't be intimidated by this. We have to become even more aggressive publicly. In, for example, these stand-down orders, the revocation orders that we issued against the Crown officials, telling them to stand down from their oath of allegiance to the Crown of England, whether it's here in England, Australia, any Commonwealth country. Those allegiances are now null and void and now need to be reestablished under common law. We need to really push that kind of work. And as happens in any kind of guerrilla movement, What matters is local initiative, people acting and not worrying about the order coming from a central office, because as we know, when you're up against a Leviathan, your central office can be taken out very easily, and it requires regional and local leaders to keep doing the work. And so that's what we're really saying to people nowadays.
Right. Just one minor detail. You said Ottawa policeman that was killed. I think you were referring to Montreal policeman, correct?
No.
Are we really?
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
in the news. Now I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember his name. It was an East Indian officer in the Ottawa Police, and
Okay.
he had the official account of it. It happened a few weeks ago now,
Oh, yes.
and it's up at ITCCS.org. If you go back
Okay.
a little while in the archives, you'll see it. He was the head of the human trafficking division of the
Okay.
Ottawa Police.
Oh, good, good.
And Ottawa and Montreal Police had cooperated in stopping the Ninth Circle
right.
ritual.
Right. Okay, good.
The official story is he had committed suicide. He had no history of depression. He had 3 children, top record on the force, a very honored cop. Suddenly he's dead after an incident in the Ottawa police station that they're not describing. So our information is that Drangheta had him killed.
Right, right. Now, we were about then to transition to the subject of the Vatican
Right.
Bank's role in the new BRIC Nations International Development Bank,
Right.
which is the alternative to the World Bank. Could you talk about that and how you see that relates to the role of the ITCCS and to the matters that we're talking about?
Well, it's been in the news a lot. Basically, there's a new kind of bipolar power struggle going on in the world, like during the Cold War. And the BRIC nations, led by China and India, are establishing an alternative to the World Bank, this AIIB. All of the countries in Asia seem to be on board except South Korea, Indonesia, and Australia, in the Western Bloc. Everybody else, including Japan, seems interested as well. So, I mean, clearly there's a big shift going on. Now, what people don't know is that one of the main funders of this BRIC initiative for a number of years has been the Deutsche Bank in Germany. And Deutsche Bank was one of the main partners of the Vatican Bank. As a matter of fact, after the American Security and Exchange Commissions advised bankers not to have anything to do with the Vatican Bank because they were openly laundering mafia money, and this was turning up all over America, the American Justice Department started, putting a bit of pressure on that whole relationship. The Deutsche Bank stepped in to bail out the Vatican Bank. In fact, for a few months, the ATM machines weren't working anywhere in Rome or Vatican City. The Deutsche Bank was the ones who came in and saved the Vatican. A lot of the money has been going from the Vatican Bank into the Deutsche Bank. And what was interesting was the present Pope, Jorge Bergoglio, fired the entire reform commission that had been set up to investigate the Vatican Bank. And he brought in his own people, who, again, they're aligned with the BRIC alliance. So there's a shift going on. And the Vatican money is heavily involved in this new AIIB bank in Asia.
Right. Now, this also then, in turn, relates to the involvement of the European and CIA intelligence networks in the Drangheta Catholic child trafficking network cults, which you touched on earlier. And so could you just elaborate more how this is developing and coming to light by the ITCCS work?
Well, part of it came out in the evidence we put into the court record in the second case in the Common Law Court of Justice docket having to do with child trafficking, where the main defendants were Jorge Bergoglio, Justin Welby, and Adolfo Pichon, the head of the Jesuits. Now, that evidence has not entirely been revealed yet because it's part of this ongoing investigation that we're conducting into the child trafficking. But some of the stuff, for example, there's clear ties going on. And here's a specific example. One of our affiliates in Italy, Rete Lobuso, which is a group in Savona, Italy, run by Francesco Zanardi. What they have documented when Francesco was a child, he was raped by a Catholic priest. And as usually happens because of Vatican protocol, that priest was protected. Francesco was silenced. And the man who did the protection of that incident was Dominique Calcagno. Now, he's one of the chief, he was a bishop back then when he protected the priest and silenced Francesco. This was back in the 1980s. Calcagno went on to become what's head of the administration of the patrimony of the Apostolic See, the APSA, which is a fancy term for it's the body that oversees funding the entire Vatican. It funds the Curia. It's the treasury and central bank for Vatican City and the so-called Holy See. Now, Dominic Calcagno runs the thing now, and an example of his importance is every time Francesco goes down with a picket sign to Vatican Square, he's grabbed instantly by the Vatican police and the Roman police. He's put in prison. He's being put through extreme pressure to be quiet because his activity is exposing Calcagno's role in child trafficking, human trafficking. But Calcagno himself is now negotiating this whole financial shift of the money from the Vatican into the Asian banks. He's one of the chief actors. He's also been named as a prime actor in the Ninth Circle cult. Now, when you look at his record, he's very involved in the diplomatic end of things, too. For example, he knows governments all over Europe. He has a long relationship with the CIA, dating back to the time when the U.S. government recognized the Vatican in 1982 under Ronald Reagan as part of the way to fund the Solidarity movement, using that Pope John Paul II to do that. His ties with the CIA and those agencies are solid, and we know the CIA even admitted a few years ago that they are heavily involved in human trafficking. They run child brothels in Bangkok and other countries in Asia to entrap American politicians. They admitted that. That was printed in the Rock Creek Free Press, a Washington, D.C. newspaper in 2011. So, I mean, you know, again, these ties between child trafficking, the financial stuff, all of these crimes are connected, and they, of course, invariably go back to Rome.
Right, right. Now, you've also spoken about a reorientation of ITCCS into a direct action force rather than primarily a legal educational body. And this comes, of course, in the context of the recent false flag, Ottawa false flag, and the Track B, and new attacks and challenges that ITCCS is facing. Could you talk about that reorientation?
Well, it's kind of shifting towards direct action in the community. For example, one of the things we're doing is, you know, the common law courts and the education work we do and the research and documentation, all that's going to continue. But there's a new focus on actually setting up groups within the community to take this direct action. For example, serving those warrants, making direct citizen arrests of known child raping priests. The particularly gross example here in Canada, and I wrote an article about this recently, this Cornwall, Ontario Catholic priest, Bernie Cameron, last year was given a National Achievement Award by the Canadian government. Even though he had been to court, there were several dozen people had named how he's not only a child rapist, but part of the Cornwall child trafficking network involving very prominent politicians, Catholic officials, and that kind of thing. He's a known, documented child rapist, and here's the Canadian government giving him a national award, and his member of parliament citing him as a man who does such great work in the community. I mean, Bernie Cameron needs to be behind bars, and there's a group in Cornwall, Ontario, that's convening, that's going to hold a public action to publicly strip Bernie Cameron of his National Citation Award and instead issue an arrest warrant against him. And these people are serious. These are families that have survived, you know, the trauma of seeing their child raped and then trafficked around and then nothing ever being done about it. One of the only cops ever to speak out about that, Perry Dunlop, is working with us to provide this information. He spent 6 months in solitary confinement because he wouldn't cooperate with the cover-up the Canadian government did over this Cornwall child trafficking network. Those are the kind of direct actions on the ground we're going to be doing, because it's the kind of thing you've got to do when you're being attacked. You don't want to feed the whole climate of intimidation and fear. We've got to say, we're not the criminals, the people in power are, and we intend to stop them. First of all, by defending the children in our community. And this is an important way to also defend individuals in our ranks that are going to be targeted. It's happened to people like Steve Finney in Kitchener, David Compan in England. People, they try to pick us off individually. Dean Clifford, sitting in a Brandon prison now for over a year, because all he did was he challenged the Canadian government, asking them why he should be taxed when the Canadian government has no legal power to impose income tax on people. He was standing on common law, and they're making an example of him, even denying him the right to issue file habeas corpus writs. Again, this Track B we're talking about, they've thrown away the law already when it comes to activists like Dean Clifford. We need to mobilize people on the ground to defend Dean and defend people like anyone who's targeted by this new system of state terror going on.
Now, turning toward the issue of providing an alternative to the structure of, as you say, the criminals in power, could you talk about the Republic of Kanata and also its English counterpart?
Right. I'm glad you asked that question. In order to establish common law courts on a legitimate basis, you need a constitutional framework like they have in the American Constitution, granting citizens the inherent liberty to establish jury trial, common law, common law system of jury trial. And so in Canada and England and other Commonwealth nations, we have no such constitutional basis. We need to sever ties with the Crown because it's a criminal body. It has no operational authority. It never actually did, if you look at the history, but especially now, as a convicted criminal body, it has no authority in Canada. We need to establish that constitutional authority. Between January 1st and 4th, there will be a constitutional convention in Winnipeg. It was supposed to happen this week, but the organizers needed more time because, frankly, the enormous response, they're getting several dozen emails a day of people across Canada wanting to volunteer to take action to set up this republic, because of these kinds of attacks are happening everywhere. And so people realize now is the time for an alternative. That convention, January 1st to 4th in Winnipeg, will establish the constitutional framework for the common law courts and the lawful basis for Canadians to now say, we're ignoring the RCMP, we're ignoring the Canadian government and its fraudulent courts. We are recovenanting to establish that common law court system, and under a new lawful authority, the Republic of Kanata. There will be oaths of allegiance taken. There'll be an official flag-raising ceremony in Winnipeg, appropriately right on the banks of the river there's a statue of Louis Riel. Now, it's become politically correct to talk about Louis Riel now. So there's a big statue of him right at the Winnipeg legislature. There'll be a flag-raising ceremony there on the banks of the Assiniboine River, as part of this whole declaration that we're now under a new political authority. This is the way people need to take something more than just episodic action. We need a whole framework, a whole way to operate now. In order to say to the police, you have to change allegiance. You have to leave these criminal bodies and come over now and take an oath of allegiance to the Republic and to the people under common law. That's the way it should be and is under natural law.
Right. And there's also activity to form a republic in England, as I understand it.
That's right. As a matter of fact, there's an organizing committee based in London. We're working closely with them. And they have an even stronger claim to do this because they, like ourselves, but especially in England, the history is in 1649, a republic under the government of Cromwell and the Puritan government established Parliament, and the people in the Commons eradicated the position of monarchy. It eradicated the monarchy in the House of Lords. It established the people in the House of Commons as the source of all sovereignty and law and authority in England. In 1660, Charles the First's son, Charles II, so-called Charles II, reestablished monarchical authority through a military coup. It was against the will of Parliament. It was against the will of the people. And it was an unlawful de facto power, but not a de jure power. Since 1660, there has been no legitimate crown authority in England. It's been an imposition. And so the people in England are simply reestablishing the authority established by the Republic in 1649. If people want to get a hold of them, if you're listening to this in England, you can write to ITCCS Central at gmail.com. It's kind of a clearinghouse for all of these movements. In Canada, Republic of Kanata at gmail.com is the email. There are organizers now acting in London as in Winnipeg to organize this movement. There's, again, hundreds of people on board with this, but they're staying off the radar screen for now because of an extremely repressive police state environment in England right now, which we can go into more if you like. But it's a risk for people on the ground to be taking this step, and that's why we're covering our flanks and setting up this kind of broader community response to protect the people taking the lead in this work.
Yeah. Could you just talk about what some of the atmosphere is like in England now?
Well, I mean, for example, there's the fixated threat law, where if you go to a demonstration more than once, they can take you in. Say you have a fixation, which could be a psychological disturbance. They can put you in one of 5 prisons. They're psychiatric facilities in London, which are run jointly by the police and psychiatrists under the direct authority of the Home Office. So they're political prisons. Criminalizing people for their beliefs, actually not just criminalizing, but making them a medical condition if you're persistent in your principles. When I was at a protest outside the Archbishop of Canterbury's office in London in 2011, a cop came up to me and handed me a piece of paper. And he said, "Mr. Annett, we've seen you at these protests before. This is your 2nd warning." Now, my 3rd warning would have been incarceration in a fixated threat hospital in London. And that's one of the reasons that, they soon after that, they actually expelled me from England at Stansted Airport. It was part of this whole way of trying to intimidate people. David Compan, it was one example. Vivian Cunningham, a soldier, who simply described to his commanding officer the arrest warrant out against Elizabeth Windsor that he had seen on the internet. He was incarcerated for up to 3 weeks in a psychiatric institution. And because he even suggested the Queen might be a criminal. This is the kind of intimidation that happens on the ground all the time. But, that's, again, an act of desperation. When criminals in power know they're being named, they come down with a heavy boot to try to stop people because they know they're in the wrong.
So that in the UK, they would have incarcerated you under this law on the basis that your concern for the genocidal acts of the British monarch are a form of mental illness.
That's what they're trying to convince people, even though there's eyewitnesses. I mean, we have more evidence at ITCCS.org than 3.5 hours on video evidence of the deliberate plan by the Crown and the churches of Canada to wipe out over half the children in 18 residential schools. From records, from eyewitness testimonies, all of that. That's not somebody's imagination. That's hard evidence.
Right. And so this type of measure is how regimes in the UK, in North America, and elsewhere are maintaining themselves in power. Naked
repression and lies and fear. I mean, it's come down to that. And that, again, is a sign, when a system loses its legitimacy, all it has left is naked power, and that's what we're seeing. That's the time for citizens to come forward and say, then we have to reclaim the law. We have to reclaim everything that's been taken from us.
Okay, good. Now, if citizens who are hearing this would like to either learn more or become more involved, how exactly can they do that?
Well, in Canada, contact Republic of Kanata at gmail.com. Generally, ITCCS Central at gmail.com. Our website is ITCCS.org. And over the next little while, we're going to be having every couple of weeks on our Facebook site, ITCCS.org-Kevin Annett Facebook site, we're going to print twice a week regular news updates from around the world of how people are winning. The positive stories, not just the gloom and doom stories, but the way people are winning victories. The things we're doing on the ground that people can join up into and be on to not only stop the crimes but take back the things that have been taken from us: the land, the law, our own children. These are the things that have to happen now. So contact us there and stay tuned for a lot more updates, because there's going to be a lot happening, especially leading up to the Kanata Republic Convention in January in Winnipeg.
Good. Well, we've come to the end of this segment. Are there any final words or observations you'd like to leave our viewers with?
I would say, Alfred, that we recognize now that the human race is facing a war of extermination. And we don't need any more evidence to convince ourselves of that. We know that's happening. We're all on the chopping block. We have to change our priorities in our life, not fit the struggle into, when we're not doing our 9-to-5 job, making this the focus of our life, because our lives are literally at stake. And so I would just urge people to not wait for central directives. Get active in your community. Contact us. It's your own life and your children's lives, and our future as a species that's at stake here.
Well, we certainly want to thank you for taking time out to be with us today, and we look forward to your updates in the future.
Thank you, Alfred.